My goodness. Cindy is so right when we were talking about, this was just a germ of an idea. And to see you all here and to really have a chance to reflect on what it's like to be a business leader, I do need you to know, just because I always have to tell people this, that you can start anywhere and become a leader. My degree is in Parks and Recreation Administration from Metropolitan State College. So, and I've spent most of my career working with our Leopard's largest client, IBM. And if I can do it, everybody who has passion and love for what they do can do it. And as I think kind of about how the whole discussion about who we wanted to keynote this event came about for me, Cindy and I were talking about it. We're like, we really want to be able to talk about what it's like to be not just a leader in business, but a woman who lives a full life and who really exemplifies being able to truly have it all. And you think about that, and honestly, I could think of no one better than Shelly Lazarus to be our keynote today. And Shelly has spent, and I'm quoting Shelly, her whole career in an industry, in a business that she loves. And I believe that that's why, as you look at the inside the program and you look at the recognition Shelly's had over the years, it's because she was doing something that she loved. She started her career, most of her career has been spent at Ogilvy and Mather. And she was at Ogilvy and Mather when David Ogilvy was the leader and when David still walked the halls. And I think she had a chance to really learn from David about this amazing industry. She went on to become the CEO of Ogilvy in 1996 and the chairman in 1997. And although the awards go on and on and on, there are a few of them that I just have to share with you. She's appeared on Fortune's list of the 50 most powerful women in business. How many times, Shelly? A lot. She was the first woman to receive Columbia's Business School's Distinguished Leader in Business Award, and she will be inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame later this spring. She's also a great friend to the University of Colorado. She was here maybe 10 years ago when there was a course called Profiles in American Leadership, and Shelly was one of the CEOs that was profiled. And when I sent Shelly an email and I just said, would you be interested in a quick trip to Colorado, maybe followed by a little skiing on the weekend up in Vail? Since Shelly and George have a place in Vail, she's like, I'm in. And then we've had this horrible snow year. No snow, no snow, no snow. So what happens when Shelly's coming to Colorado? We get 2 feet of snow in Vail. So please welcome Shelly Lazarus, our keynote.
Two feet of snow is further proof that Sherry Leopard can make anything happen. But it's wonderful to be here with you. I've already learned so much in 25 minutes. I've taken notes. I have these great quotes. I think that film actually has everything you need to know about leadership. Take it home, study it. I talk about this subject all the time. It's all in that 10 minutes. It's just wonderful to be with you today, and I just want to spend the time I have talking about the experience of being a woman in today's business world. Being a female CEO and chairman has given me something of a celebrity role model status here in the U.S. and around the world, and I speak all over the world, and It's just amazing to see how women are coming into leadership roles everywhere. I was telling someone last night that when I speak in China, I'm like a rock star, because if 400 people say they're coming, actually 800 show up, 800 Chinese women, and they're hanging from the chandeliers, and they're yelling, and it's great. It's a rave. It's just great. But the truth I will tell you is I never think of myself as a role model for anything. The fact that other people do has given me this great opportunity. Here's the real opportunity: to meet the most remarkable women in forums like this one. So it's an honor to be here with you. For decades now, it seems, I've been talking to women about their progress and the process of growing into the leadership ranks. And while it's been apparent that we women have made huge progress forward, it's also apparent that it's been in fits and starts. The truth is that while we've had many breakthroughs and established beachheads and had many firsts, the first woman in space, the first woman university president, the first woman to run a global tech company, I think, honestly, we might have expected to be even further ahead by the year 2013. Yeah, I believe that. So for every Benazir Bhutto or Hillary Clinton or Angela Merkel or Park Geun-hye, who just became South Korea's first female president, we also have had women who've ascended the ladder quickly, were spotlighted by media searching for megastars, and then were treated to an equally overblown flameout when their success didn't stick. That comes when too much is put on too few women to represent our total success. But the spectacular successes and failures are just that. They're spectacles. They're distractions. Distractions that fail to acknowledge the many women, many women, who are enjoying full-blown successful careers. And while these women may not be famous or lead fantastical lifestyles, they lead lives that are full and are balanced. I suspect most of you in this audience are leading these lives. Whether you are in key roles in the companies you founded or represent, or are on the way there getting your MBA, you're in places your mothers probably didn't contemplate. Things are better, but things are not perfect. And while modern society as a whole is moving towards equality for women, it's just slower than I might have expected. Now, on the plus side, there is generally more understanding and compassion about women's unique burden of balancing family and work. There's certainly more conversation about it. We do seem to have retired the idea that a woman can have it all, if by all that means she has to do everything perfectly. I've always loved the observation about Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, that Ginger had to do it all backwards and in high heels. We've made progress on pay equality. 3 years ago, the Lilly Ledbetter, as you all know, Fair Pay Act was passed. That was progress. And yet we are all impatient. What's taking so long? Now, I actually think impatience is a good thing. It applies pressure. It makes things happen. But while advocating impatience, I also think it's very important to keep perspective, to recognize how far we've come. You know, I can talk about this. When I first started my career in the 1970s, it was perfectly acceptable. It was legal for a prospective employer to say to a woman, "We'd love to give you a job, but part of the training program involves 3 months of the sales force. And you know that sample case, it's so heavy taking it in and out of the trunk." It's before we had computers. Sample case. So I don't think a woman could do that job. Or, "We'd love to give you a job, but what would our account executives' wives say when you had to work late with their husbands?" Or, "We'd love to give you a job, but there are so few spots. You understand, we couldn't really waste one on a woman." Now, these were all things that were actually said to me in 1970 by representatives of companies that are revered and honored today. I won't tell you who they were, but I'll also never forget. I was almost always the only woman in the room in most meetings, even when we were talking about sanitary napkins, diapers, skin cream, and hair color. It was just me representing all women in the world. Talk about power. There was the inevitable moment. It was always about 20 minutes into the conversation when these men were discoursing on having a period. By the way, there was not one female leader, employee in the whole marketing and leadership group at Kimberly-Clark when I worked on the business, not one. And so they would invariably turn to me at 20, 25 minutes and go, well, Shelly, what do women think? And so for 10 years of my career, I represented women all over the world for everything. But back then, nobody taught me how to balance career and life. There were no role models. No one talked about how to be a successful woman in business. I had to learn it on the job because nobody took women seriously. Nobody thought women were going to make much real impact. Nobody thought we would ever come into the workplace in numbers that mattered. And even if we did, we certainly wouldn't stay long. Well, they were wrong. They were very wrong, and we are the proof. But it's also clear to me that our progress will not be measured in political marches or rallies or by big impassioned speeches or by any single fancy magazine list of who's who of women who made it. There will be no defining moment that will place women lickety-split exactly on even footing with men, even when Hillary becomes president. I think it all comes down to this. It comes down to finding your own path and executing it as well as you can. So how do you do that? Let's talk about that. I have only one legitimate role standing before you today. That's that I'm old, so I can talk about my own experiences building a career, trying to balance home and office, kids and husband, and my professional life. I talk to you as someone who has trod the path, who has felt the pressure, who has had to make the choices, and has come out on the other side smiling and very happy. So let's start with what has to be the most ironic part of my career. It was not the result of some hard-won, carefully orchestrated, willfully executed assault up the corporate ladder. Quite the opposite. The truth is, and I say this to you, none of my life was planned. I certainly didn't plan a big career, nor did I expect to end up in advertising, much less become CEO and chairman of the company. For full confession here, and I talk especially to all the students in the business school, I went to Columbia Business School in 1968, where I was one of 4 women in a graduating class of 300, not from some feminist passion. I was there because I wanted to get married to a guy. It's just us, right? Full confession. When I say that, people go, oh, so you went to business school to look for a man to marry? No, I had the man in mind, actually. I was in love with a guy who was in medical school, and I needed money so we could get married, and I needed a job, and I couldn't type. Actually, I could, I just didn't want to. So in 1970, think back, perspective, right? Talked about in 1970, if you wanted a job in the commercial world, and you were a woman, your only choice at the entry level was to type. Mad Men got that exactly right. Everyone started as a secretary. Now, you could choose where you typed, but you were going to be typing. I heard, it was a rumor, that if you got an MBA, I wasn't exactly sure what that was at the time, you probably could get a job where they wouldn't make you type. By the way, it was a hypothesis. It was not proven, and that's the truth. I'm probably the only woman who ever entered Columbia Business School motivated by the single goal of not typing. Now, even my first career choices weren't fused with ambition. Early on, I was working at hair care giant Clairol and got a call from a recruiter saying that Ogilvy & Mather needed an account person who knew something about hair. That's code, of course, for that they needed a woman. Again, this was still the Mad Men era. I thought, this will be fun. I'll do it for a year or two. I had an MBA. I'd been on the client side. I'll now do the agency side, and then I'll move on. So these were all a series of accidents. But the accidents all had great outcomes because I found a field of work so interesting, so endlessly changing, so compelling, and dare I say it was so much fun that I just kept at it. I never wanted to leave, even when I married, even when I had children. Now, having said that, please don't mistake accidental for easy. Many of the elements of my life have indeed accidentally fallen into place, but every step was work. Careers are all about spotting opportunity and then making the most of those moments. You know, I laugh. Young women come in very often to see me, and they sort of take out the sheet with the plan, the career plan. You know, by this point, I want to be at this level, and then I'm going to have kids, and then I'm going to start my own business, and then, you know, and just, it turned, in the breaker, ask anybody who's over 40 in this room. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. You know, the moments of opportunity are unpredictable. So you have to be ready, be brave, close your eyes and jump. Or since we're in Colorado, I will share with you that someone told me very early on in my career that career development was a bit like skiing. Just always keep your knees bent and be ready for anything that comes along. Yes, you will be frightened. I figure that I've spent half of my career being frightened. Fright is actually a good thing. It compels you. It gets all your juices going. So being frightened's okay. You're going to be frightened, but just close your eyes and jump. Now, for me, the most significant jump came when I moved from advertising to direct marketing 15 years ago. I was running Ogilvy's most visible and prestigious advertising account at the time, American Express. When I left to run the flagship office of Ogilvy and Mather Direct, I thought it was a great opportunity, mostly because it suited my personal needs. Senior management wanted to continue to move me up. They wanted to broaden my experience. And so after running the company's largest account, the next logical step at Ogilvy at the time was to go to run an office or a small country somewhere. At Ogilvy, that usually meant shipping out to Singapore. That was always sort of a bite-sized one. Or Hong Kong for a couple of years. Well, I was plenty ambitious, but I didn't want to leave New York City. I couldn't leave New York City. You know, the guy I went to business school for, well, he was now a practicing pediatrician in Manhattan. I had little practicing doctors don't take up and go, bye, I'll be back in 2 years. I had little kids. All my family was there. And I was not going to leave just so I could get management experience. I was not going to sacrifice my life for my career, which is a very important thought. I was not going to sacrifice my life for my career. Instead, I was going to figure it out. What do? I just had to find a way. So now remember, this was in the days when women were pretty rare in the business world, and where women with family issues were rarer still. If a woman had a family, she made plenty sure to downplay it. On Wall Street at the time, there were women on Wall Street who didn't even get married for fear that it would derail their careers. And if they did get married, this was really important, never, ever acknowledge it or wear a wedding ring. They never wore wedding rings. The mantra was, above all, never, ever let your personal life interfere with work, or at least never let it show. But I was pretty bold. Remember, I didn't have a plan. There was nowhere I was trying to get to. I just loved what I was doing, so I took a chance. I let Ogilvy's management know I had an interesting idea, a better idea. Rather than going to Hong Kong, I wanted to take a management position at Ogilvy and Mather Direct, which happened to be just 20 blocks south of where I was working right at the moment. But fortunately for me, and this is important, I worked for a company that always considered talent first. Nothing was important as talent. They wanted me, and they wanted me to develop, and they were thrilled that I had an idea, that someone wanted to jump the pond and move from advertising to direct marketing, which is a very major move at the time. People just didn't do that. But if I wanted to, they were happy to make this happen. Now, one of the lessons here, one of the key lessons here, is that you have to figure out your own solution, and then you have to ask. Not in a confrontational, do it or else way, but in an, I've been thinking about this, and this is the right path for me way. Don't wait for someone else to solve it for you. And you have to have courage. Courage to do what's right for you, what's right for your family. I would actually argue that the lack of courage to speak up is perhaps the biggest obstacle that we as women put in our own way. Courage is essential to gain what you want in life. It's essential to gain balance. Courage to say, this is what I need to do. This is what is important to me. You can't expect the people around you to understand or respect your priorities if you don't have the courage to tell them and to act on them. I know from my own experience the truth of that, and let me tell you another story. I had been a management supervisor on American Express for just about 3 weeks. This was a big deal job at Ogilvy. As I said, it was the biggest account in the agency. A woman had never run it. 3 weeks in, I'm informed that an all-day meeting has been called by American Express to discuss the entire marketing strategy for the next 5 years. You've been to those meetings, right? They go on for 6 hours. It's an offsite, I explained to my new client, who was the marketing head of the company, and still is a good friend, so the story has a happy ending, that I was not going to be able to get there until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The meeting started at 8:30 because it was field day at my son's school. So my client's response was the obvious response. He said, "You're kidding, right? Hey, I just told you this is a big strategy meeting. We all need to be there where the rest of life is going to be determined in the 5 hours." So I assured him that I was most definitely not kidding. And I explained within the space of a week or two, he wouldn't be able to recall who was actually at that meeting, and there were 25 people at the meeting. And especially if one of them wasn't there for 3 hours, who was going to remember? On the other hand, my at the time 8-year-old son would never forget that his mother hadn't come to his field day. I knew where I had to be. I knew where I was going to be. If anyone didn't like it, they could fire me. And that sort of has been a mantra for life. If you don't like it, you can fire me. Now, but courage, girls, courage. I'll get on to that, and that's not the worst thing. By the way, I just have to share with you one of the joys of my life is that Nora Ephron was a friend. But one of the great observations from Nora Ephron is that there are 2 things your children never forget: every time they threw up and every time you weren't there. So I just share that with you from Nora. But I want to tell you about another moment of epiphany in my life. 2 years into my working life, I was in my boss's office, and a woman came in, and I don't know if you've ever actually seen anyone run in circles, but this woman she literally was running in circles, and the reason was that there was a media plan due at Unilever at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was now 1 o'clock, and the computer was down. And when the computer was down in those days, it wasn't jiggling the cord or calling the help desk. The computer was down. So she's running in this circle, because she's apoplectic that the media plan's not going to be ready at 2 o'clock. And my boss sort of got in her path. He could tell her orbit because she was... And he just stopped her. He took her by the shoulders, and he said to her, "What do you think they're going to do to you? Take away your children?" So now I could hear Charlie at least once a week in my life say, there are those, what do you think they're going to do to you? Take away your children moments. So I say, speak up, be who you are, live your values. I've never snuck out to attend the school play or go to the pediatrician appointment, ever. I've always walked straight down the center hall of the agency. And the truth is, and here I can share with you, in 35 years, no one ever has confronted me about it. I was never challenged. Not once in 35 years, not even when the 5-year strategic plan meeting was happening. Besides, what's the worst thing that can happen? They fire you? Yeah, maybe, but probably not, especially if you're good. I often say first become indispensable, then tell them what you need. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. No one can take away your children. So I've lived to... Now, here's another thing I've come to know, and it was already discussed a little bit this morning. Success does not happen in a vacuum. No one gets to a successful position running the race alone. It's astonishing to me that I still run across people who consider themselves on the fast track but think that their own smarts will be enough to get them right up the ladder. Nobody gets to the top of the ladder without the help of others on the rungs below and the rungs above. I know from experience there are 20,000 people, we have 20,000 employees, behind me at Ogilvy and Mather, and despite all the fixation the media has with the CEOs at the top, I have always known that I would be powerless without the spectacular people with whom I work. And that has been true throughout my career. It's all about partnerships. It's only about partnerships. I always say, give me 10 terrific people, and together we can accomplish anything. Look at this conference. Look at what happened from 10 people or 3 people, or whatever challenges you face, find the partners you can succeed with. Find ways to motivate them. You have to work at it. Don't take them for granted. Find ways to motivate them. Find ways to build a team. You know, there's a school of thought that thinks women are disadvantaged in the workplace because, unlike their male counterparts, they didn't spend their school years playing sports and learning the fundamentals of team spirit and competition. Now, I'm quoting here. I love this one. I don't know how true that is, but I guess it does explain. When I first started in business and we used to have these big sales meetings, I never understood why they used to show films of football games. You know, you'd go to the coffee break and you'd come back and there was like a football game playing on the Fran Tarkenton talking about, you know, or Vince Lombardi. Now I understand it. But, so that explains that. But for myself, I've experienced an enormous sense of team in my career at Ogilvy and with my clients over the years. It's the only way to get things done. And here I would say to the contrary, that women do have an advantage. I was reading a very interesting article on the notion of what they call evolutionary psychology. The premise is this, that there's a biological basis to much of our behavior, gender hardwiring, if you will. And if you understand it, you can use it to your advantage. In business, this is the article now, women are by and large operating in a male-dominated world created by men and for men. And while we don't have what psychologists deem the male advantages, you want to guess what they are? I'll tell you. Here are the male advantages. And you can confirm or deny whether this is true. Technical focus, single-mindedness, although they've never met me, and competitiveness. But while we might not have those, supposedly, we don't have the disadvantages. We don't have that alpha male thing. We don't have to be the one person in charge at the top of the hierarchy to find self-worth. We don't always have to be the one who is right, no matter what. You know those guys. We can actually believe that anyone's success is everyone's success. We know how to share. We communicate. We remember to say thank you. So we're instinctively, inherently, I would argue, good at team building. Actually, the best speech I've ever heard on team building was given by a cultural anthropologist at Cambridge University, stay with me for a minute here, who spent months studying the Cambridge rowing team. He embedded himself with the team from the first tryouts to the final race against their arch rival, Oxford. Cambridge had lost the race for the 7 previous years, so they were mad. The anthropologist was interested in how teams get built. His first insight was that the winning team was not made up of the 8 fastest rowers. Technical competence was traded off for emotional intelligence all along the way. The rowers selected were those deemed best at pulling the crew together as a unit. Even more surprising, and I love this part of the story, 10 days before the race, they replaced the cocks. You know, the head on board, the little person in the front who steers and yells at everybody and keeps everybody together. Unthinkable. You know, these people had been practicing together for 5 months. When anyone, you know, sort of the shoulder blade was a little bit out of line, they could all compensate. So the fact that they took out the cocks and put a new person in was unheard of. But my favorite part of the story is that they replaced the male cocks with a woman, Rebecca. And here's why. The male Cox, in the coach's view, was trying too hard. He was trying too hard to urge the team on to victory. He was trying to win for them. The woman took a different approach, more supportive, more intuitive, more trusting of the team to deliver. The female Cox lavished praise on her rowers. They actually have a film of the race, the final race of Cambridge versus Oxford. You could hear her actually say, as they went through there, evidently, and I now know more about rowing than I ever hoped to, but there are 3 or 4 places on the Thames that are tricky. So whoever wins through those 3 or 4 places wins. And you could hear her on the film as they got through each one of those tricky little places. She'd go, "Good boys, good boys." And as the cultural anthropologist explained it, and by the way, the rowers afterwards said, "When Rebecca said that, we knew he got it. We knew he had it." But here's what the cultural anthropologist concluded. He said, she had these 8 fabulous rowers who knew each other and trusted each other, and she just let them row. I actually think this is a philosophy of leadership now. Just let them row. Find the 8 most fantastic people you can and just give them the opportunity and be there to support them. The idea that you as the leader have the best ideas, the right ideas, that you are the smartest person in the room, and that you can manage over people's shoulders to get the job done right or just by force of will, it's just not a winning proposition. It just doesn't work. Not with the big, complex organizations we have today. You have to build a team, a great team, and then trust them to get on with it. Of course, this also takes confidence and courage. It's not easy. All you people who like to be in control all the time, you got to give it up a little bit for your people. Keeping your hands off is hard, but the payoff is huge. By the way, Cambridge won the race. And please don't ever forget to say thank you over and over again. Recognize the people who make the difference, who are always there when they're needed. Great leaders, I've observed, they are inherently generous. They share the mission, they share the journey, and they share the applause. Now I turn to the P word, which has already come up this morning, and that's passion. I'm thoroughly convinced that you will find one consistent attribute in all great leaders, and that's passion. Passionate belief, passionate communication, passionate action, passionate commitment, and follow through. Look around you. Who are the people you really admire? Think about it. The people who inspire you. Who is on your list of the people you'd like to meet who are the great leaders? I'm willing to bet they are people who are passionate about what they do. Why are entrepreneurs so compelling? It's because they're so passionate. They will not be denied. Because in the end, the most important thing I have to suggest to anyone is to try to do something you love. It's the whole answer. I know this is easier said than done. I know people need to make a living. I know people who perhaps wish they had the perfect job, but I'm here to tell you that no job is perfect. If you find things about your work that you love,